Right, I'm recording.
Got it.
Okay, well, good evening, everybody from London, and welcome to another Zoom event with Harif. Harif, for those who don't know, and I'm sure you all know this by now, is the UK Association of Jews from the Middle East and North Africa, and we aim to raise awareness of the history and culture of these Jews. You can subscribe at our website, which is at www.harif.org, and do check out our sister website, Point of No Return, which keeps you up to date with the news. This session is being live streamed to the Harif Facebook page, and it'll be recorded, and the recording will be up on the Harif website within a couple of days. So this evening is going to be a little bit different from our usual format. We are approaching Pesach in a couple of weeks. The biblical exodus from Egypt is an opportunity to recall a modern exodus of Jews from Arab and Muslim countries. At the Passover Seder, we recite the verse in the Haggadah commanding, and you shall tell your child on that day, because of this Hashem did for me when he took me out of Egypt. On this week's Harif Zoom, grandparents from Morocco, Iraq, and Egypt will tell their grandchildren about their memories, their childhood, and the circumstances of their departure. And since the Passover Seder is the time when children get to ask the questions, Ma nishtana halayla hazeh, etc., this evening we have the grandchildren in each family asking the questions. So thank you to all our participants for being here with us tonight. This evening also gives us an opportunity to introduce some of the other members of the Harif team to you. And I'm delighted to be handing over to Michelle Huberman, who is the creative director of Harif. Michelle, will you introduce our first speakers?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I hope this evening is going to inspire everybody watching, and afterwards people who are on catch up to do the same with your families. I'm of grandparent age, but not a grandparent myself. And so I understand how important it is to have these conversations. And there's so many questions that I wish that I'd asked my grandparents at the time. By the way, I hope you can't hear that noise in the background. That's one of my dogs, sadly, who's protesting being tied up, but I will sort that out in a moment. The idea for tonight was instigated by one of the Harif team, Ralph Assor, who's been with us for over 7 years, and he's been a trustee since we became a charity 3 years ago. Ralph was born in Casablanca in Morocco and came to the UK in 1956 and married in 1967. He's got a very interesting story. He's got all of his he's got his children with him, he's got his grandchildren with him, and we're going to start off with Daniel and Natalie's children, Isabel and Olivia. So we're going to start with Olivia, and Lawrence, I'll let you move the spotlight over.
Your background, where were your parents and grandparents born?
None of your business. Well, I go back further because it's an interesting story as far as I'm concerned. I refer first of all to my great grandfather. His name was Mesod, and he was born in Essaouira and near Safi, who was a port which was the #1 port for sardines in the world. So my great-grandfather had close ties with England, trading. His grandfather, this great-grandfather of mine, decided to travel to England on business. But in those days, you couldn't go on your own. So he took the whole of the family to promote his trading contacts. remember, it was in the 1800s. That's where my grandfather, named Solomon, was born, in Whitechapel, London. I have a copy of his birth certificate. He was born in 1859 in Whitechapel, and he was also a member of the Bevis Marks Synagogue here in London. I obtained this information from the Spanish and Portuguese synagogue in London. Unfortunately, I do not have any info on my grandmother's side of the family. It's amazing. This is why I was keen to have the meeting today, because it's amazing when all your parents and grandparents are around, you're not interested really in asking them about their past until they pass away. So now I don't even know very much about my grandmother. So this grandfather of mine returned to Morocco, where my father was born in Marrakesh in 1908. So is also buried in Marrakesh. And my son Daniel and his wife Natalie visited his grave some years ago. I only have one photo of my grandfather, none of my grandmother for some reason. On my mother's side, I have a photo of her father, who was a rabbi and was born in Safi. I can go on a lot more, but this gives you an idea as to how we had a British passport, which was due to my great-grandfather traveling to London on business. And because my grandfather was born in London, he was entitled to ask the British nationality. And because of that, I suffered. Yes, next.
Why did you have to leave Morocco and
Can't hear.
why did you have to leave Morocco and why did you choose to immigrate to England?
Right. Well, I came to England in 1956. That was due to the fact that the president of Egypt at the time, his name was Gamal Abdel Nasser. He visited Morocco. At this time, war was taking place between Egypt and Israel in 1956. So times were difficult, and security-wise, Jews were being persecuted, and the situation was unsafe. We had 250,000 Jews who lived in Morocco at the time, and for centuries, we lived in Morocco for some 2,000 years. But as the situation became untenable and waves of immigration started to leave, mainly for Israel, but also to Canada and France. So it was time for my family and me to also leave the country where my ancestor lived for some 2,000 years. I was the first one to leave of my family at the age of 18 and chose England because of my British passport and was very interested in the history of my grandfather traveling to England. I visited where he lived in London in Whitechapel. However, my intention was to stay a while in England and then go on and live in Israel. I applied at the Jewish agency here in London, but was not treated very well because at the time, the Sephardi Jews, especially from North Africa in Israel, were not very well received. So when I decided to carry on living in London, I was having a great time as an 18-year-old, living on my own, with nobody telling me off and guiding me. So I was having a fabulous time. I have to tell you that in 1957, because I was British, I was called up in the British Army, and that was the price I had to pay for staying in England and for my great-grandfather living in London. My time in the army and subsequent life after the army is a different story and can be told another time. Are you happy with that answer, Olivia and Isabel?
Yeah.
Yes, great. So Jesse is the third one, is?
Oh, what do you remember of your time in Morocco?
What do I remember from my time in Morocco? Well, my time in Morocco up to 1956, when Morocco was declared independent from France, I had a very, very happy time and a tremendous youth in Morocco. The schooling was in French, all the education was in French, and it was fun having teachers coming from France. There was no Muslims who were educated in our school, which was very odd being a Muslim country. Until independence, my friend and I had a very, very close relationship, but with Jewish people and French people only, not Muslims. There were with these friends I lived with in Morocco. When we had to leave, we came to London and we remained, four of us came together and we remained very good friends. We had a tremendous time. The same as you're having a good time yourself, Jesse. I lived and got married in London, and we had a very great time together. As Jews, we lived a very secular life. No mixing with Christians or Muslims. Our way of life was very, very Jewish. Incredible when you think you lived in a country where you don't mix with the indigenous population. My one activity, as you ask, was basketball. With my friends, we played for the same team, which all against non-Jewish teams, which most of the time ended in serious, very serious fighting. As we played against non-Jewish teams, so we had a few black eyes to be shared together. We also belonged to a local Jewish youth club, and with them attended theater, films, and had a very good time. That's in a nutshell the type of life I had in Morocco when I was 16, 17 years old. Right, next.
How easy or difficult was it for your parents to settle in London?
Oh yeah, well, it wasn't easy because there was a clash of personalities, clash of education, way of life. But they settled down in a way. When you come to think about it, it wasn't bad really. So my school was a very mixed school. The only time I had contacts with non-Jewish kids was when we played basketball or sports. We never got on with non-Muslim kids, and we never mixed with non-Muslim kids, which is funny and very odd considering it was a Muslim country. Our teachers were French, and the education was in French only. Incredible, we had no lessons on the Moroccan history. We didn't speak Arabic with other Moroccan boys, and it was like if we never lived in Morocco, we only lived in France. The Moroccan history, it was like if we never lived in Morocco. However, we attended Haida. We had a very, very strong Jewish life, and we were taught Jewish education by Moroccans, by rabbis. But I explained earlier that I was, in a way, compelled to live in England because my life was very much in England. The English friend I made at the time were very nice to me, and to this day, I'm still friendly with them 50 odd years later. Life was very different in England. Altogether, we had a new world in education and knowledge, very modern way of life, but I settled very quickly, and my only regret was not to have immigrated to Israel. But otherwise, my life in England was very enjoyable and very exciting at the time. So I don't know whether I went back to Morocco for a visit, maybe 4 times, and by coincidence, for my work, where I worked in London, I was sent to Morocco on business. I encouraged my parents to come and live in England, and I was delighted when my mum and dad moved to London. My 2 sisters and brother also moved to London. So also during the 50s, so I was able to have a family life. My parents and siblings settled very well in London, and they never had any regret leaving Morocco. So I don't know whether this answers your question, Maddie, unless you want to ask me something else.
That's great.
Was it great? Yes. You got all knowledgeable about me?
After all these years?
After all these years, I have to have a Zoom meeting for you to know something about me. Terrible. What about you, Ben? Where are you? Ben?
I'm here. Hello? Can you hear me?
Hello, Ben. Do you want to ask any question?
Sure. Would you say you had a pleasant life in Casablanca, and do you regret leaving when you did?
No, I had my life in Casablanca was, as you call it, very easy. We spent our time on the beach. We had a very pleasant life. Life was easy under the French people. We lived like in Europe, and living by the sea with other young men and young ladies. We made friends, and family life, which was very, very Jewish, was very enjoyable. So I can't complain. I had a good time. Unfortunately, it had to end when the Moroccans became independent, and it was not very safe for Jewish people at the time to stay in Morocco. As I told you before, there were 250,000 Jews living in Morocco, and there's only about 2,000 to 3,000 left now. But I had to be content with survival in Morocco and make sure the best of life we had was tremendous until we had to leave. I made friends very easily when I came to London, to answer your point, which to this day, I'm still friendly with them. I can only recall they had a very good time, not a miserable time. Life was not difficult. I settled down for some reason very quickly. And even when I called up to join the army for 2 years national service, I found it very so exhilarating. It was different. It was European. It was exciting. So to this day, when I look back, I feel that I had a good time. And then what was also very exciting is I met your grandmother, Valerie, in 1967, and we've been married 55 years, and we had a good time. And it's nice to have our grandchildren and children together. So it's amazing that I'm 84 years old now. I came in 1956 in London, and life has gone. This is my grandfather, by the way. That's the English one. And that's all I have to say. That's my mother. That's my mother. Her name was Esther. And that's my father and my mother when they were somewhat younger. What else have you got? And that's my family, my father, mother, my brother, my sister, and myself. That's a family portrait, which you wouldn't believe is the only one I've got. And that's a young lady I've met like 55 years ago. Anyway, are you happy with the answers to your questions, Maddie? Tell me, Maddie, are you not allowed to go? Well, put a thumb up.
She did.
No, she's not allowed to speak. They're muted.
She did, but she's put her thumb up.
Yeah. All right, Ben.
Yeah.
You got the reply you wanted, all of you. Naturally, the good advantage today, which my other friends on this screen will appreciate, is somehow when we met from time to time, we never asked questions. I was never able to tell you the life story, and it had to be modern times like Zoom to be able to know a bit more about my past. Anyway, I hope that you've enjoyed it. There's lots more to tell you, and I will punish you by telling you some more when I next see you. All right.
That was totally fascinating. I really enjoyed listening to that, Ralph. And I've got one question before we finish, because I know that you're off to celebrate a birthday soon. So whose birthday is it, by the way?
Daniel.
Happy birthday, Daniel. We won't hold you too much. I was just thinking when you were saying, Ralph, you were 2,000 years in Morocco, and I know you came from Essaouira and Casablanca. And weren't those towns more influenced by the Spanish Jews coming over in the 15th century? And was that part of your family's story?
Yes, the history is a bit mixed. Being Jewish and living in Morocco, we had Sephardi, but it was mainly until my great grandfather moved to England. It was mainly purely Moroccan. We are purely Sephardis. We came from Safi, southern part of Morocco. We had rabbis in our family. The reason for their rabbis because it was a very secular life, and we were trading. And the trade that we did, my great grandparents brought us to England. They had to move to earn a living. There was
what were they doing? What were they trading in?
They were trading, as I understand it, in gold. Yeah.
Right.
Gold, and between England and Morocco was the main trading route. But that was the history of it in a nutshell.
Well, I hope that you will carry on the conversation together. And thanks very much to all the Assor family. Well done. Thank you very much for being part of it. It's been really fantastic. Happy birthday again to Daniel. And we're now going to move.
Thank you for having us anyway.
Oh, it's been a pleasure. This was your idea, Ralph. We're here with this idea, this concept tonight because of you, Ralph. So thank you so much. I found it really enjoyable.
A good idea.
Yeah, thanks very much. Okay, so now I'm going to move us back to Lynn, and we're going to cross over the Atlantic to Canada, if I'm right. So Lynn.
That's right. So I'm very grateful to Gladys Moallem, who lives in Montreal, and she has actually recorded her interview with her grandchildren because of the time difference and because the grandchildren are at school during the day. This was the only way we could do this, but it shows that we are an international organization with a global reach. So without further ado, we will now play the recording of Gladys's conversation with her granddaughters.
Second, 5,782. My name is Gladys Perez Moallem. I am the coordinator of the Women's Learning Group of the Spanish and Portuguese Synagogue, Montreal, Canada. I am interviewed today by my two lovely granddaughters, Rebecca Moallem and Sarah Moallem in Toronto. for our wonderful journalist Lynn Julius in London, England.
Hi, my name is Rebecca Mualim. Hi, my name is Sarah Mualim, and we'll be asking our grandma some questions. I'll start off. Where were you born?
Pleasure I have today. Thank you.
Where were you born, Grandma?
I was born in Baghdad, Iraq.
And what do you remember of your childhood?
I had a very happy childhood, enjoying the love and warmth of my parents, surrounded by a wonderful family, being the first child for my parents.
What school did you go to?
I went to the prestigious Jewish private school, Alliance Israelite Baghdad. All our studies were in Arabic and French. In addition, we had twice a week Hebrew, reading from the Bible and Jewish history. In grade 5, Hebrew was replaced by English.
Were all your friends Jewish? And did you have any Muslim friends? And how were those friendships affected after founding the state of Israel?
All my friends were Jewish. We were all eager to be in Israel after it was founded.
As a child in the Middle East, how much were you protected by your parents from the turmoil that was happening in the Middle East with Israel?
We were always escorted. It was not safe for us to walk alone outside. We were very protected.
Why did you have to leave?
Life in general was good. We had a good social life, our own private clubs, and our own sport activities, but not without incidents. Some of them were serious, like the Farhud in 1941, when Muslim mobs attacked the Jews in their homes, killing, robbing. 200 people were killed within 2 days of Shavuot, and a few thousand were injured. After that, many people tried to flee the country.
Which positions did the Jews of Baghdad occupy at work?
Many of the Jews of Baghdad occupied high positions in various sectors, like government, bank, medicine, teaching, commerce, and many others.
How was the life of Jews following the creation of Israel?
Following the creation of Israel in 1948, Jewish life became unbearable. Most of the people lost their jobs. Many people were put in prison, even hung, being accused of Zionism, spies of Israel, or communism. Life was not safe anymore. Many people preferred to leave and seek a new life elsewhere, but Jews were not allowed to leave.
How did the Jews finally leave?
People started to flee illegally through the north with the help of Kurds, or through Iran in the south, where the Shah was ruling. They were lucky if they were not caught by the Iraqi authorities and brought back to be imprisoned in Iraq.
Did the Jewish people finally leave legally?
Yes. In 1951, following international pressure, Jews were allowed to leave, renouncing on their citizenship. This was followed by freezing all properties, belongings, and money in the bank.
How did you settle in Israel? How did you and your family?
El-Al landed in Baghdad to carry the people to Israel, each with one suitcase only and 50 dinar, equivalent to British pound. We left 2 houses there, money in the bank and all our belongings, never to return.
And how did you settle in Israel?
That was very hard. Israel received us very warmly, but it was a new country and had to absorb 1,000 persons a day from Iraq only, beside the others, for a total of 120,000 from Iraq.
Where did Israel put the Jewish refugees when you guys arrived?
Israel created refugee camps where they fed us temporarily until they sent us to new camps. They created a big tent for each family. We were lucky to get a place close to Petah Tikva, which is near Tel Aviv.
And how many people were you?
We were 7 people. We made divisions in the big tent. I am the eldest of 5 girls.
Where did you get your water? Was there electricity?
There was no water, no electricity or facilities inside the tent. Everything was outside. We had to study with kerosene lamps and bought a big radio that worked on a battery.
How long did you live in these tents?
After 6 months, the tents were replaced by a big wooden room per family. Again, without electricity, water, and facilities inside. After 7 long years, we finally received a new apartment in the city of Petah Tikva, where we lived happily, got married, and each went to her own place.
So, Grandma, why did you come to Canada after getting settled in Israel?
We came to Canada after spending 18 years in Israel. We were weary of the wars, where your grandpa fought 2 wars, two of them. We joined my husband's uncle in Montreal, Canada.
Have you been back to Baghdad, Iraq?
No, we are not allowed to enter the country of our birth. We were given a laissez-passer, written on it, not allowed to come back, like we were criminals. We have no desire to go there anyway. With my love to you, all my family, my friends, and everyone who would listen to our story. I'm happy. Thank you for asking me. It will be a nice memory for you through your life to have my story.
Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for sharing your story. And we love you very much.
Thank you, my love. Thank you. I am proud of you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much to Gladys and her lovely granddaughters for doing that. And thank you to Jeff, her son, for recording that interview. Now, we're very happy to have Gladys with us live on this Zoom. If you want to ask questions, and actually, if you want to ask Ralph any questions or our next speaker any questions, you're welcome to pop your question in the chat at the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to hand over to Michelle one more time to introduce our next speaker.
No, does Gladys want to say a few words first?
Well, maybe later.
Gladys, do you want to say a few words?
No.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think we're going to be whizzing over in a minute.
Put the speaker on, that's fine.
Okay. Okay. Well, we're back in London now. We'll be speaking to everybody at the end. We're going to be whizzing over to Mill Hill because we have Ninette Levy, who was born in Egypt, who's actually come down specially to be with her grandchildren in London. She lives in St. Anne's, which is on the northwest coast, a very lovely place that I haven't been to yet, but I've heard it's very lovely there. And Ninette is actually the Harif lady in the north. If ever we're asked for a speaker in Manchester or whatever, we call on Ninette. So it's really lovely now to have her two granddaughters who I met with her at JW3 last year. We've got Serena and Chloe, and hopefully they're all together. So we've got the three of them together. So if we can move over now to Ninette's camera, and then lovely, hi everybody there. And then hopefully your granddaughters will be able to, oh, you look lovely, the three of you, really lovely. And so it's going to be over to you now to ask the questions.
Hi, I'm very, very delighted that you've asked my granddaughters to question me. They've been dying to do that for a long time, and now they got the opportunity to publicly execute me. So this is my grandmother.
Yeah, so that brings me on to the first question. Is
okay.
Where were you born, and where were your grandparents born, and what do you remember of your childhood?
I see. So you want to do it this way?
Yeah.
Okay. I was born in Cairo, but I come from a very, very mixed family. My grandmother was born in Italy. Her father was the chief rabbi there, and they all immigrated from Spain through Sephardi, and we speak Ladino at home. That's my first language. Early in the mid-century, my great-grandfather was invited to Turkey to be a rabbi there. And he had a beautiful, beautiful daughter, which was my grandmother. And the Turkish consul the British consul in Turkey is my great-grandfather. He had a son who lived in Leeds, lost his wife, and the father made a shidduch between his son and my grandmother. And so my mother was born in Turkey. At the age of 6, the British and the Empire, they decided to bomb the Dardanelles. So they evacuated the British families from Constantinople to Cairo. So my grandfather and my grandmother traveled to Cairo, and he was then in charge of all the barracks and the British barracks where the families used to live, and as a purveyor and provide them with the goods. He used to be the purveyor for the British Army, British Navy. My father, on the other hand, was born in Turkey, and his mother, Joya Sikirel, is the sister of the Sikirel Empire that we had in Egypt. Her husband, my grandfather, was a silk and traveler, and he used to have caravans coming with the spice and the silk trade to Turkey. On one of those trade journeys, he unfortunately got attacked and he died, leaving my grandmother Joya with 3 children: my father, my uncle Gabriel, and my auntie Sarah. So they were invited to Egypt because that was the duty of the eldest brother, to look after his wife, his sister, if she was a widow. And so that's where my father comes into the story.
And so where were you born, and what do you remember most about your childhood?
And that's how my father met my mother in Egypt, and I was born in Egypt. So my grandmother is Italian, my mother is Turkish, and I am English, but we're all British. And it's the first time in my history that my daughters are born in England and my granddaughters are born in England. Now, next.
Okay, next. So what school did
this
you
is
go
my
to,
building.
Melanie?
That's our building where we lived in Cairo. We lived in Meydan al-Tahrir, which is the square that's changed from Meydan Ismailiyah to Meydan al-Tahrir. And it's got the Cassini Bridge, and we used to have the British barracks in the corner, but that is where we lived, on the 3rd floor.
And where did you go to school? What school did you go to? And do you remember if it was a Jewish school or a mixed school?
No, I was sent to an English school, which is rather unusual for a Jewish girl, because they all went to French schools. The common language in Egypt was French, and we all spoke French. By the way, that's my dad. He was in the army, the British Army. He ran away from school, didn't want to join the family business. He was he didn't like to follow rules, like somebody else I know. He didn't like to follow. He escaped from school, joined the army when he was 18, and he was with General Allenby. He spoke 14 languages. I don't know how many dialects of the English. He was the PO and adjutant of General Allenby when they entered Palestine at the time.
Okay, so back to the school.
Oh, school.
Where did you go to school?
I went to school.
So you went to an English school?
Yes, I went to an English school because my grandfather, being English, wanted me to speak English and not anything else.
And was it just a Jewish or mixed school?
I know it was a missionary school, which was one of the best schools in Cairo. Also, it was close to where my parents lived, because the chauffeur used to take me to school and bring me home afterwards. I studied there until and I got a scholarship to the high school, which was the English Mission College. English Mission College, I was the games captain, and in Emmanuel School, I was the vice captain of my house, and that was because I was very good at netball and running, and I was a mischievous person, as you can tell.
And tell us, Annie, were all your friends Jewish, or did you have any Muslim friends, and were those friendships affected after the founding of the State of Israel?
I lived a very, very, very continental life. I did not have a very large Jewish circle of friends. My school was predominantly, yes, the first school was predominantly Jewish girls, but we had Muslim girls, and we had Egyptian girls and Copt girls and Italian girls, but there were the Italian schools, French schools, Armenian schools, Greek schools, and no Arabic schools. There was only, most of the Egyptians went to either French schools or English schools, and there were a lot of schools. like the Franciscan nuns, the French nuns, the English. They were all.
So you had friends from all over.
And I had friends. My best friends were mostly my Greek friend next door neighbor, my upstairs friend, my Italian neighbor, and that's how I learned how to speak Italian and Greek.
Amazing.
On top of my English, on top of my Ladino, on top of the French that was taught that is the common language in Egypt, and Arabic, because I had to translate, because my mother couldn't speak Arabic, my grandmother didn't speak Arabic, and so the maids learned Spanish. Yeah, believe it or not, my friend's little maids spoke Italian.
Next question, Serena. As a child of the Middle East, how much were you protected by your parents at the turmoil what was happening in the Middle East with Israel?
Right. As a child, I was very, very protected. I couldn't go out anywhere on my own. My mother used to lock me in the house with the maids, and I wasn't allowed to go out anywhere. As I grew older, when I was 13, I decided, or at least my grandmother decided, I should mix with other people. And she took me across the road to the Maccabi, which is the Jewish Boy Scout movement. And I met a lot of friends there. And unfortunately, in 1947, when Israel was declared, the police went into the court, that the group, and took away the books. And they had all the list of all the youngsters, all the names on it. All my madrichim, we were all taken to jail. And they knocked on my door in the middle of the night. And they took me because my name was Ninette. And they said, Ninette Eskenazi, you're coming to jail. My father said, it's nothing got to do with Israel or anything like that. But they wouldn't listen, and they took me. And because my godfather was Ibrahim al-Hizari, which was a high person in the judicial system in Egypt, and a very good close friend of my dad rang him up in the middle of the night. He came there and he said, how dare you arrest my goddaughter? Her name is Ninette Eskenazi, not Serena. So you got the wrong Ninette. In my block, there were 3 Ninettes. One was Ninette going downstairs. The other one was Madame Ninette, who was the mistress of an Egyptian minister. And she lived on the 2nd floor. And my friend Ninette Sasson was living on the base, in the ground floor. And I was Ninette on the 3rd floor. So
it's a popular name.
A very popular name, yes. If you were Sarina, you become Ninette. You become Nina, Ninette. If you are Fortuné, you become Nina, Ninette. If you are any other name, you always had finished up with Ninette. So that was it.
So Noni, why did you have to leave Egypt?
That was the tragedy. I was 21, and in 1956, they gave us an edict because at the beginning of the year, they requested that all people that had the British passports or were related to anybody that was Jewish would have to register. My dad told her not to, but my mom insisted on it. My brother was 19, and she was very worried about what would happen. We heard that a lot of people were put incarcerated. There were a lot of, one of my cousins was in one of those jails, that camps they had in the middle of the desert, and he was very, very ill. And when he was released 2 years later, we had a lot of problems when Israel was declared in Egypt. It wasn't a comfortable time. And Jewish people couldn't get a job. we had to work for Jewish companies. I spoke 4 languages, wrote and spoke fluently, and I was asked to present myself at the BBC. But what I did, Ninette Eskenazi didn't seem too Jewish, but when they asked me my religion and they found I was Jewish, that wouldn't work for them. I wanted to work for a airplane company. Again, I couldn't join anything that was to do governmental. So it made it very, very difficult. In the meantime, I was working as a secretary in an American college, and one of the teachers there suggested, why don't I go to the American embassy and apply for a scholarship? And I did. I went and I wrote that I wanted to become a journalist or somebody that writes about the history of the country. And I won the scholarship, and it was to go to Massachusetts University. But my father, being Middle Eastern, turned around and said, my daughter is not leaving this house unless she's on the arm of a gentleman. I was 18 at the time, and I had no intention of getting married because I was very keen on studying and learning things. I learned things that were stood stead for me in the life to come. I was a teacher, and again, I got a scholarship to come to England to get my degree, but again, my father said, no, you can't leave home. So that's when I went to the American University to become the secretary for the people there, because I also went and learned how to do shorthand typing in French and English. But I was forever studying.
So just referring back to the final few questions. So why did you come to England having left Egypt?
We had no option. We were British, we were kicked out, all our possessions were taken, and all our goods were, our house was taken. My father was sequestrated because he was in the intelligence, apparently. I didn't know that when we came over to England. He used to report to 2 different people, and he got paid indirectly. And he was an art collector, a painter, an artist, and he used to go to the palace and be with the king. And when the Folie Bergère came to Egypt, the king invited him to come. I led a magical life in Egypt. I didn't have a life like other people tend to have. My parents went, my mother was not a card player. She was a musician. That's my dad in his youth. That's the Bugatti. That's the first car he had. That's him and my mum when they got married. My mum was 16 and a half when I was born. Oh, wow. So her and I grew up like sisters. When I lost her, I lost my roots. I lost who I was and where I came from.
Well, final question, Nonny. That's
Mummy and Daddy again.
Okay.
Yes. And the next picture. The next picture, please. This is
actually the last question. So when did you?
Yeah, I know. Have you been back to Egypt? I have been back to Egypt. And this is what she saw. Yeah. I was invited back to Egypt because they were rebuilding up a temple of which my parents and my grandparents were donors and benefactors. And also I took this opportunity in 2010 to go there because I've never been to my grandma's grave. She was the best thing that ever happened to me, and I wanted to see her grave. Unfortunately, I couldn't find it because our mausoleum had been ransacked and all the marble taken out, and the grave was full of rats. And it's the most horrendous sight I have ever had to experience. I'm really, really sorry.
But that was my trip to Egypt. Positive note, next photo.
Next photo, keep going. Until we find a happy one.
Yes.
that's all our
next
questions,
one,
that's all
next
our
one, next one.
Next photo.
Next
keep,
one.
keep going through.
This is
happy
my- this is mommy and me. I'm her first baby, and she's got the picture of me and her. The next picture you probably will see is the one that's it. That's mommy, daddy, us, and that's our car. My dad had a buick. Now that buick was renowned in the town. Every Sunday morning he honked, and everybody came out and came downstairs. The Rosenthal's, the Cohens, all my friends, all the children. We used to be 21 people in that car. At the front seat was a one long seat, and there were 3 adults with 4 children on their knees. In the back were 4 adults with 4 children on their knees. A dog, a maid sitting on the floor. And then the roof went down and pushed to the back, and 4 kids were very, very lucky to hold on, and we went on a picnic. And it was marvelous. We went to the barrage, which had beautiful gardens, and we all had a great, great time. In the winter, we used to go to the zoo.
There's the next photo.
The next one.
Keep them going.
That's the garden of the pigeons, the pigeon garden. That's my mum and me. My mum is pregnant with my brother. He's 4 years, he was 4 years younger than me. Unfortunately, I lost him 2 years ago. And that's little me. The next one is also, I was a bridesmaid. And this was our upstairs neighbor, the Italian lady that I talk about. The next picture, that's a highlight of me to show you how pretty I was.
Very pretty.
Oh, that's my 3rd birthday. That's my dad with all his medals on our balcony. And he was so proud of it. And he was the aide-de-camp to General Allenby. And the next one, that's Daddy with me and my little brother on our balcony, full of flowers. Next, please. Me at the piano. My mom went to the Conservatoire de Musique when she was young, because my grandfather had a beautiful voice and he was amazing. And he wanted my mother to learn how to play the violin, but her hand was too small, so she had to learn how to play the piano first. And then from the piano, she went to the violin, to the mandolin. There isn't an instrument that my mom couldn't play. On the above picture, you've got a picture of my grandmother, of me, of my uncle. And that was the piano we had. I can't remember, a German make. Next, please. That is the Esperanto Congress, World Congress in Egypt. As I said before, we never belonged to any of the Jewish societies or anything. We had our seat in the synagogue, and we used to go to synagogue with my grandma. My grandma was the daughter of a rabbi, and she taught me to love my religion, not to be burdened by it, but to love it. I love my religion, and I do what I have to do because I believe in what I do. I don't do it because I've been told or because of fear. That's me, and that's mom and dad's at the barrage. We used to meet all the armed forces there, and we used to have a lot of soldiers that used to come to the house, especially the Jewish soldiers. Daddy would go to the synagogue and pick up Jewish people that were there, soldiers especially. So when we had a Shabbat night, we never knew how many people were going to come to the house to eat. So we were always surprised. And my mother always used to say, put some more water, and family hold back, which was FB.
Next. We've probably got so many photos to go.
Yeah, we've got loads of photos.
Probably gone over time.
That's my mom and my grandma. You can have another picture, please. That's me and my little sister roller skating on a Saturday morning. Yeah. Oh, that's the big picnic. No, that's on the beach. We used to go for 3 months to the beach. That's where I grew up a little bit. But that's in swimsuit. My grandma knitted. I wasn't allowed to wear sexy swimsuits like everybody else. My grandma did it for me. Next.
Zoomed in.
That's just to show you how pretty I was.
Very
and what
beautiful.
beautiful legs. Not how old I am, how short I am.
Gorgeous.
Oh, my mum on the Vespa. She wanted to have a Vespa, not a car. I had a car. And when the Vespa came along, she had it. That's at school in my gym uniform, getting ready to do something, I don't know, whatever, playing.
Probably playing netball.
Yeah, that's the 4 captains of our school. Hoda. Now, Mary Bahar is Jewish, but she converted, fully converted to Christianity and lives in Massachusetts. My very, very, very best friend. And that was Isis. Her father was the Syrian ambassador. And Hoda, I can't remember what her father did, but she wasn't Jewish either. That's me with our school uniform. That's my dad with some English importers that he took to the pyramids. And that's my mom. And if you notice, my dad is such a big man. The donkey, there wasn't another camel for him. So they gave him a little donkey. And the donkey has to have his legs straight so that he couldn't stand because that is weight. So the donkey opened his legs. Sorry, legs. Oh, Manor House. The Manor House used, oh, sorry. That's where I said in Benjamin.
Oh, there we go. Said with enthusiasm.
And horse riding in the desert on a Sunday. School graduation day with my diploma. With my mom and my sister. She'd just been to America, came back. And that's, oh God, that is, he's the Syrian ambassador. She was the daughter of the a high officer whose father was in the Israeli war at Gaza. And I thought to myself, she's going to sit by my desk and she'll kill me.
And look, we've had a comment.
That's it.
Okay.
Oh, I won a singing concert.
Yeah, beautiful singing voice.
That's the thing, Gala des Amateurs, and I had the first prize. The Shepherd's Hotel and the Semiramis Hotels were places where we always went for afternoon tea and took our friends there. And my dad and my mom, they loved dancing. They always went everywhere. And the ballroom, I mean, I never missed anything. The Auberge de Pyramide was like my stomping ground. But I always went with my father, not my friends. And the friends would go there. That's my 18th birthday. But, oh, a birthday party in the house. My admirers. This is a New Year's Eve party. And I've met up with all my friends later on in life. They're in France, in Canada, and in America.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. And oh, that's the Boy Scout movement. When I came to England, I went to the Jamboree in 1957. I was introduced to the Queen and to Lady Baden-Powell. And Prince Philip was following behind the Queen, and I was in the right of honor there. And he was walking past, he stands behind his back as usual, looks down and says, "A girl?" "Yes, sir," I said, "French Boy Scout." And he says, "My God, the French know how to do it." And so when I went up the rostrum, he turns around to his wife and she says, "She's not a Girl Guide, she's a Boy Scout." So I was rather embarrassed. It was a beautiful experience. Coming to England, my father said, never look back. We never talked about the past. We just looked forward, and we never, ever, ever talked. The first time I spoke about my past, who I was, where I came from, or what I did in my life, I thought I was bragging, and that's the reason why I never spoke about it. But I went, so Nijinsky, in his first appearance of Afternoon on the Phone, I saw Tito Gobbi, Maria Callas, and Beniamino Gilli in the opera of Aida, which I fell in love with. Although I used to go with the other people, my group of Boy Scouts and Girl Guides, my troop, we used to go. They're mostly in different, we went to that's my group that went to Israel. And again, My luggage went with them, but I didn't go because my father promised me we would go next year, but we didn't go the next year.
This is
2 years later,
amazing.
we were kicked out.
Yeah.
This is really amazing. And I think we're going to have to carry this in another time.
Well, we actually have a comment here that says, from Doris, saying it's very sad about your grave that was smashed up. Oh,
I know, that was very
wait,
sad.
what cemetery was it in and where? The reason why she's asking is that before COVID, she used to take children every few years to fix and clean up the graves and cementing the broken stones. And she's got lots of videos from Shabti Cemetery in Alexandria.
No, Shabti is in Alexandria. Ours was in Cairo. And it was the one that was it was down, and that trip was a very traumatic trip because I left the group on their own, and I took a taxi, ordered a car, and the car that came with a guard, front policeman. I have pictures with the people, the soldiers in front of me and a motorcycle behind me. And I went through the yellow lights, red lights. I didn't understand what was happening. I couldn't understand why me. Apparently, my father was very well known amongst the Arab hierarchy, the Egyptian hierarchy, and solicitors and lawyers there. And when I was arrested on Water Bridge, he turns around and he says to me, there was a change of the guards. And I said to him, excuse me, I'm not the Queen of England. He says, yes, but you're Sammy's daughter. And it's nice to see you back. And I said, you knew my father. And that was my trip to Egypt. And when I wanted to see my flat, and when we went upstairs, the officer was behind me, and they said, no, she can't go upstairs. She says, what she wants, she gets. And I went upstairs and I saw a flat. It wasn't as big as I thought it was because we used to ride the bicycle there. It was smaller than the house I have, but it was very big at the time. Believe you me, it was very big.
You Gladys as well now.
Yeah.
Okay, why don't we bring, Ralph has left the meeting, but why don't we bring in Gladys as well and bring in Michelle and Lynn, and perhaps open, sort of some more questions, or perhaps opening up for questions. Michelle, where are you? We've lost you, Michelle.
No, she can't speak. So I just wanted to ask Gladys, how did your daughters, your granddaughters feel about talking to you? Did they enjoy the experience? Did they learn from it? Was it something they never thought of doing before?
They loved it. My granddaughters live in Toronto, so I don't see them very much that I can tell them about my stories. The elder one was here last year, and it was the COVID week. So I invited her and we sat outside, and she asked me all kinds of questions, and I didn't know that she was interrogating me. She went home and she wrote everything. So I understood that. Then she came again and she again asked me in a very natural way, but she would go home and write everything. So I don't have much, I don't see them much because they are in Toronto. Here I have my daughter with the 3 boys. They ask me all the time. They ask me questions, and they record it, and they know a lot. And when they come to me, they see your book, Lynn. your book, and they read in it.
Yeah, that's
when
wonderful.
I am preparing supper, they take your book and they read. And each one of them, they grab it from one to the other.
Thank you so much, Gladys. Thank you. I'll tell you, that's the best news. What about you, Ninette, and your granddaughters? I'd like to ask your granddaughters, how do you feel about listening to your grandma speaking, and you know, has it stimulated an interest in Egypt, in the way things were?
I think Noni always talks about her childhood in Egypt, and I think there's so much interest in the family. And I purchased an art project like years ago based on Noni and my great aunt and great uncle's like journey from Egypt to the UK. So I find it very interesting and I love hearing stories about it.
Yeah, because it's our roots as well. So it's everything that's happened to her has made us who we are as well, and the closeness of the family that we are. And yeah, we all love a nice story, the music.
We're all musicians, all artists.
Yeah.
Yes, we're
the culture that you
the
brought with
it's
us.
cultured. Yeah. It's I wasn't the typical Egyptian Jewish girl. I was more foreign than Jewish. I didn't even know I was different from any of my friends, and they didn't know I was any different either, because I didn't speak with a foreign accent. I spoke local accent. French accent was French, spoke English. When I came to England, I spoke Queen's English, and that was bad. For a refugee to be above the locals, oh God.
Gladys, do you have any stories like that you want to share with us?
No, it's very difficult.
Gladys, do you have any stories like that you want to share?
Another story?
No, Gladys.
Oh, Gladys, sorry. I'm forever never ending.
Yeah,
No.
Gladys, what about the music in your country? Do you still love it and listen to it? Or did you listen to continental music?
Gladys, did you hear that? Gladys?
No, I didn't understand what's
about music. What kind of music did you listen to? Did you listen to continental music or Arabic music?
We listened both. We did both. We listened a lot to Egyptian music, in fact, in Baghdad. It was, but it was like, we looked at it as for the old generation. We had, there was a lot of Kulthum there once a month. But for us, the young generation, it looks like these are for the old. Now that I am here, I am listening to it.
Oh, nostalgia.
Now I am listening to all the Arabic ones that I missed in Baghdad. I know them by the names. I heard them, even if I didn't listen, but I heard them. I know all of them. So here I am really enjoying them.
We never did. We never, ever went to an Egyptian movie or had an Egyptian culture, really, or Egyptian music. Our wireless was always with the BBC, and it was with the French records, English records, French records, really, more than anything else, and a few English ones. But then we had, did you have cinemas, continental cinemas? You see, Egypt or Cairo was the center, was very Europeanized country. We had premieres of Mogambo. We had the premiere of, what was this very long film that was divided in half? And we had the stars there. I met most of the stars. They used to stay in a hotel, and one of my friends used to be in the hotel lobby, and I've got my autograph book full of Charlton Heston I met, but the others, I'm name throwing now.
Okay, what we might do now is, should we open it up to everyone as we always do?
Yeah.
So everyone will be allowed to unmute in about 1 minute. Those people who haven't put a question mark on the name, if you don't give me your names, I'm afraid I'm going to have to take you out of the meeting.
But I just want to, before everybody has a free-for-all, I just want to thank our participants for their wonderful stories, very moving. This is so precious, you know, and it's so important to tell the next generation and the generation after that. So thank you so much for doing that. And I just want to tell everybody Yes, I know Lisette is dying to ask a question. I just want to tell everybody that we're actually having a little break over Passover, resuming in May with a very exciting program. But just yesterday, I was told of a wonderful presentation that somebody could give about the Jews of Borneo. So we're squeezing that in next week on the 5th of April. So do join us for the Jews of Borneo. No, I didn't know there were Jews in Borneo, but we're going to find out all about them next week. So do join us then. And now we can ask Lisette to unmute, and everybody can now unmute and take part in the conversation.
Perhaps if you put your hands up if you want to speak, we'll do it in sequence. Lisette is first.
Hi, everybody. Well, I continue after Gladys because Gladys left in 51. I grew up in Iraq in the 50s and the 60s. So about the music you were saying, we were exposed to, we only had one channel on TV, and we couldn't choose channels, but we had a lot of Egyptian movies and songs, which we grew up to enjoy. As for Iraqi music, personally, we also did not care for, did not care for much of the Arabic music, and we did listen to Elvis and the Beatles and the Twist, and unfortunately for me, I still cannot enjoy the Iraqi music as much as the continental, as you said. And I think I enjoy the Egyptian music and movies once in a while when I see them again, but not the Iraqi for some reason. So that's just to continue after Gladys left.
Okay, does anyone else want to speak?
Thank you, Lisette.
Your
Thank you.
electronic hand on your dashboard, then we can see your next, or is it?
Can I add something?
Absolutely.
Yes.
I would like what I am listening now, something that I discovered in Israel. It is called Furqat an-Nur. Please find it on YouTube. It is so beautiful. It's a guy who was born in Israel, Moroccan family, and he is now he's only 34. And he did a group of about 25 people, and he is a great singer and a musician, and it's all in Arabic. And it is mostly the Egyptian. You will love it. His voice is amazing.
What was his name again? What was his name?
The group is Furqat an-Nur. Please write it down and find it on YouTube. I can never leave them. He sings amazing. And by the way, he went also to the, what's the name? The UAE, the Arab,
yeah.
UAE, what is it?
Yes, the Emirates.
The Emirates. He took all his group, about 25 people, and he said, that was my dream. And they played over there. And the way he sings, the way he plays is amazing, amazing. His name is Ariel Cohen. Ariel Cohen.
Ariel Cohen. Furqat an-Nur.
And all the
Dorit, you want to say something? Oh, yeah, here we are. Lisette has written it in the chat. Thank you, Lisette. Just before Dorit says anything, I just wanted to say that if anybody would like to tell their story and have their grandchildren ask them questions, we'd love to do this again, maybe in the summer holidays when the grandchildren are freer. So any volunteers who want to do this, please, contact Harif, info@harif.org. Okay, Dorit, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, even though I do a lot of work in Alexandria with the cemeteries and the records, I was actually born in Israel. My father was born in Alexandria. So I was just wondering if, you know, if anyone sort of, that was, my father didn't actually speak about his childhood. He was too upset. And all I got from my mother was, oh, you just left your shoes in the sand and ran off with a suitcase and £5 in your pocket. And she always made it like a sort of a joke. And I was really would like to talk to some people who actually lived and were born in Alexandria, just on a personal note. So I don't know if you can facilitate that at all.
I wasn't born in Alexandria, I was born in Egypt. But
Right.
we go to Alexandria every year. We had a flat, we hired a flat for 3 months. We used to go in June and come back at the end of September or just before the Yom Tov. And we used to go from, we started off as sporting, went to another beach, which was a good one. And then we finished at the final one was the one that had the cabins round, and it was like a very private beach in Alexandria. But there is Alec Nakamuli, who is from London. He is London, and he is very, very much engrossed in the Alexandria thing. I don't know of anybody that's so attached to the Egyptian one, because the Egyptian one is different. None of us wanted to speak about Egypt or what we've lost or what we've done. And I was always very distressed when we used to go to the dining room table and we only had 5 sets of silver cutlery on the table because there was only 5 members in our family, and we could only get 1 set if it was silver out of the country commission. And that was a reminder of what we had, what we didn't have, and what we finally achieved to regain and worked hard at it. But it left us with something that whatever we had can be taken away from us tomorrow. But what we have in here, the memories we have created with our children, grandchildren, the theaters we've seen, the lectures we've heard, all this, nobody can take away from us. We can be in rags, but we're still rich and very rich up here. And thank you for having us.
Oh,
Thank you so much, Ninette.
I'm sorry.
Thank you, Ninette.
Yeah,
Very emotional.
the organization that Alec Nakamuli runs is called the AJE, Association of Jews from Egypt. And if you contact me, I can give you their details.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Anyone else?
Do you live in London or are you still in Israel, Gladys?
Gladys is in Canada.
Yes, in Montreal. Yes. I would like really everybody to Google Farkat El Noor. You will love it. You will love it.
I'm trying to, but I think I've got the wrong spelling because while we were talking, I was looking it up, but and it couldn't find anything. I have no idea what letters to put in for cat.
Yeah. You Google it. I found it there.
Oh, I tell you what, send the link to Lynn and she'll forward it to me.
Okay, I will send
Right.
because I am in love with it. So it's a
Okay,
great.
no, I couldn't find. I was just looking.
It's so nice to end on a happy note, literally a musical note.
Do you want to publicise our next forthcoming meeting?
Yes, I did. So yeah, I think we've been here for quite some time now and people have to go, but I expect that you'll all enjoy our next meeting, which is next Tuesday. Just to remind you, Jews of Borneo, And please tell all your friends. And thank you so much for joining us.
And you've got the other three
Pleasure.
now.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you, Lynn. You are doing a
Thank
great job. This is something
you.
very
Yeah. And thanks to Lawrence for all the technical messing about.
I tell you, this has been the hardest session we've done with so many speakers and videos and slides. It's been fun.
It's also amazing. And I thank Lizette for connecting you with me.
Thank you to Lizette.
Otherwise, I would have never known you. Great job. You revived the past that nobody can do the way you are doing it.
Yeah, it's a team effort,
And you connect us with the young generation. It's so nice. All the young children today. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Thank
I hope
you.
they take over from us, the younger generation.
So our stories will never die because of you, you are getting it to the new generation.
Because of you.
You organize, you inspire us, and you make all the generations happy to be together. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you for inviting us. So beautiful.
Here. Thank you.
Thank you, Ninette. Thank you, Serena, Chloe. That was really lovely.
Bye, everybody.
Good night, everyone.
Bye.
I think that was.
Yeah, we're still going, darling.